In this lesson, we're going to start working with the categories section. So let's go to the Postman, and there, let's open this categories endpoint. Well, this categories endpoint will return the list of categories. And inside the Postman, you can see that in order to call this categories endpoint, we also need to send the access token in the authorization header of this request. So how to pass the access token inside the Wheel Studio? Well, it's quite simple. Just go to the Wheel Studio, and there, let's add a new method and name it getCategories. Right after that, let's create an instance of HTTP client. Now with this HTTP client object, let's use the default request headers property. Then pick the authorization header property. And right after that, let's create an instance of authentication header value class. We need to resolve the namespace for this class. In this class, we will add two things, the token type and the access token itself. So in the Postman, you can see that the token type is bearer. So let's add bearer here as the first parameter. Then we need to pass the token here. But the question is, how to get the access token? Well, in the login method, we have used the preferences to store the token. And now we need to retrieve the token, so simply use preferences.get method. And then pass the key name here, which in our case is the access token. And then just set the default value, that should be empty string, or just use string.empty. I have already explained you how to save and retrieve the value from preferences. So just make sure you have watched that episode. Now with this line, we can send the access token in the authorization header. Now you can see that this is a GET request. So we need to use the getStringAsync method along with HTTP client object. Then we're going to pass the URL of categories endpoint here. So just copy the API endpoint of categories and then paste it here. And before this endpoint, we'll concatenate the API URL that comes from this app settings class. Now make this call awaitable and use the async keyword along with this function. This line will return the JSON response. So we need to store the result in a variable and we name it response. Right after that, we need to convert the JSON response into C# classes and objects. Because the data that comes from these categories will be in a JSON format, and to use this JSON data in our Xamarin Forms application, we need to convert it into C# classes and objects. So we will use JSON-convert.deserialize object. And then let me show you that this categories endpoint will return the list of categories. So we need to pass the list of category class here. And then pass the response that contains the JSON data. This line will convert the JSON data into list of category class. Alright, then just return this. Then we'll get the error here, because this method needs a return type to list of category. So let's use the task list of category class here. That's all from this endpoint. Now I will see you in the next lesson.